Hey all! So today we're going to take a look at how to keep the beat when soloing or playing longer fills. What do I mean by keeping the beat? Well, imagine that you are playing a one measure fill and you're going to do the busiest thing you can think of and you end up rushing the whole thing. And when you're done, when you try to go back into the beat, you're early. Or you're going to do something like kind of really laid back or sparse and you end up dragging the whole thing, right? You're not keeping a consistent time while this fill is going on, while you're not playing a solid beat. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some basic techniques to help you keep the beat going, and through that we'll hopefully actually be able to make some fills that are a little bit more interesting. Okay, so to get started, we're going to do something simple yet extremely effective. We're going to play the bass drum on every single quarter note, or on each part of the beat. And yes, this can get repetitive and it can get boring, but as our kind of initial part of this development of this exercise, this is actually going to be a great entry point. Let me show you some quick examples of that. Now, while it's true that doing this is a bit of a crutch, something that you can lean on to get through the fill, it's also going to be true that doing this a lot will help you further develop your time. Then you won't be so dependent on playing the bass drum on every quarter note. As an example of this, I want you to pick one fill that you're working on. I'm going to demonstrate this with a one measure beat as a setup into a one measure fill. Now, it's going to go back and forth like this: beat, fill, and the first three sets, I'm going to include the bass drum with the fill. But the fourth time through, I will take the bass drum out. When you're practicing this, I want you to just keep doing this over and over again without stopping. When you're working on the parts of the fills that have the bass drum included, really focus on the feel of it. Focus on how much space there is between each hit. And then when you get to those fourth time throughs, don't focus on the beat at all. Just really try to clear your head and try to let your muscle memory take over. Okay, so things are moving along, but obviously we have one big problem. Our fills are very restrictive, right? We're basically, because we're keeping time with the bass drum, we can't use the bass drum in some creative way in the fill. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch things, and instead of keeping time with the kick, we're going to keep time by stomping on the hi-hat. Now for these exercises, when you're switching, don't bring in the bass drum as part of the fill yet. Just work on being able to keep the time with the hi-hat. And again, do the same format: 3 sets with the hi-hat, 4th set without the hi-hat. Okay, so now it's time to bring the bass drum back in a creative way this time. One thing to note, when you're first doing this, when you got the bass drum and the hi-hat both going during the fill, you may run into some difficulties. It may be hard to kind of work out all the motions, but if you keep practicing it, your independence will further develop as well. Okay, so finally we're at the point where we can make things a little bit more creative or more unique. Once you have one particular fill that you've mastered without the hi-hat, just keep in mind that you don't have to take the hi-hat out. You can leave it in. If that's something you don't normally do, it'll add a little bit more to your repertoire, right? Or maybe you don't have to keep it with a steady beat. Maybe you play on stomping the hi-hat just the first 2 beats, or maybe the second and fourth beat. Or maybe if this is a thing that you repeat several times in a song, maybe each time through you can use a different hi-hat pattern. That way you kind of build things up a little bit more each time you come back to it. So I hope you guys found that useful. I am putting out other drum related content all the time, more lessons and gear review and all sorts of other good stuff. So if you don't want to miss out, then don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, peace.